The priest slumped against the bar, narrowly escaping glancing himself on a broken bottle. He propped himself up. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence greeted him, interspersed with a jolly beep-boop-beep sound from the fruit machine as it tried to tempt him into losing his spare change. The priest thumped the thick wooden bar with his bald fist. "This is a joke. It ain't funny, you know." "Oi, God botherer! Keep the bloody noise down, will ya? Some of us have work to do," a northern voice said from the murk. Flynn squinted and managed to pick out a shadowy figure sitting at a small table towards the back of the pub. The alcove in which he dwelled was crammed between the doors to the toilets. As he got closer, doing his best to avoid tripping in the gloom, he saw a man hunched over the table, sat closest to the entrance of the ladies.
With an encyclopedic knowledge of cake and exclusive access to the church's stockpile of holy weapons, the Order of the Crimson Rosary are on the front line in the eternal war between good and evil. Whether it's repelling demonic possession, judging the authenticity of supposed miracles, or having the final say on the colour of bunting at church fetes, the organisation's members sacrifice their own freedom to keep the world safe. Father Flynn, the top operative in the UK, has been responsible for a number of recent high-profile gaffes. Given an ultimatum, he must choose between returning to his old job of preserving the last microfiche microfilm in the church's library, or submit himself for rehabilitation. Yet evil doesn't take a ticket and wait in line, as the dreaded Cannibal Nuns from outer space land to begin their annual harvest. Can Flynn get himself sober enough to repel their evil munitions? Or will another idyllic British village become the nuns' latest buffet? One thing's for certain. To beat them, Father Flynn is going to have to kick the habit. Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space was written by Duncan P. Bradshaw and published by the Sinister Horror Company in 2019. In this episode of Sinister Reread, Justin Park chats with Duncan about one of the publisher's most unlikely hits. This is Justin here from the Sinister Horror Company, and today we've got Duncan P. Bradshaw, or Dunk as I know him, here with us today to discuss his book Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space. Hello, Dunk.
Hi!
How are you? You good?
I'm all about for you touching me. I mean, not touching me.
Right, I can see how this is going to go for the rest of the interview. Okay, so we're here to talk about Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space. And the first question I want to ask, why did you write the book?
I was lying in bed one morning where great ideas tend to come from lying in bed or sitting on the toilet. I was lying in bed at this time. I wasn't having a shit at the same time. I was at my mother's house when she lived in Penwithwick down in Devon, Cornwall somewhere. And I just finished one book, I can't remember what, and I was trying to come up with a title for the next thing. And I knew I wanted to do a B-movie type book, because B-movies are cool. Indisputable fact. And I tried to come up with some crazy things and put them together. And I just thought, well, everyone loves a good nun. How about making them hungry? So Cannibal Nuns. And I thought, well, that's good, but it's not quite zany enough. So I thought, well, how about if they come from outer space? So Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space was born. And that's pretty much... As soon as I had the idea, then kind of had the idea of the main character, of Flynn, and then the opening scene pretty much just started sort of appearing to me in a waking dream, which is good.
So the book started really from the title?
Yes. My books tend to start from either... It's rare that a title comes to me first and then I write the book about it. More often than not, it's a character or a scene or like I have to have an opening line before I write the book. And as soon as I got that, then I'm touche away.
So with Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space, you got the title. Did you then have to search for that opening line for that? Was it in the same process?
Well, the first search I did was on Google to make sure that no one else had ever written or made a film called Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space, because the last thing I wanted to do was then go and get so far into it and find that I've already basically copied someone else's idea. So, but then I kind of knew roughly that because obviously nuns in themselves are religious, funny enough, I thought it'd be good to then go and pit almost religion against religion. So I just thought, well, it'd be perfect for the protagonist to actually be a member of the cloth as well. So, and then I had the poster image of The Exorcist. The guy standing in the lamplight and he's looking at the house. And that just pretty much just triggered the actual the sort of opening scene then, really, where Flynn rocks up to the house to go and carry out the exorcism.
So from the sounds of it, your inspirations, you've talked about some of those already, come from everywhere. You've got the B movies where the title came from.
Yep.
The Exorcist poster image was what kind of set you off on the path of...
And then I rip off some of the film later on.
And then you rip off some of the film later on. So, where else did you draw your inspiration from? They sound like they came from all over the place. Can you think of others and where you got them from for this book specifically?
Yeah, I mean, in the main, I think especially up until writing this book, a lot of my work has been quite heavily doused in pop culture and then set alight and let to run around in the field and go and set everything else on fire. Cannibal Nuns, I think, was pretty much... I think I made a conscious effort with it to almost go a bit too far with it, just to try and push it. Just because I thought, as it's a B-movie pastiche in a way, let's go and kick the arse out of as many things as possible. So, obviously, there's that scene, which I think we'll get to at some point in time, that chapter, which is rather good. But then... it just touches on so many things. So it's got a bit sort of League of Gentlemen about it. Eerie sort of British sort of sitcoms. 24 is mentioned in it because 24 is the fucking greatest TV show that was ever made. Anyone who says otherwise will get a punch in the face from me or my elected champion. And then just as I wrote the book, there's just other things came about. Total Recall, which is another fucking brilliant film. Again, all these 80s action films, especially with Arnold Schwarzenegger in, are just pure fodder for these sort of things. I was a bit worried actually when I got together with my wife because she had never actually seen half of these. So it was good going through and watching again and educating her, so to speak. But it's just... my brain sort of kind of works in that sort of way. So when I kind of just get to bits, it just thinks, well, hang on. How can I introduce that in a line somewhere? Or I've got stupid things like I even mention like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon in a line, or the Tiffany song, Are We Alone Now? Just stupid things like that. My brain thinks, oh no, I've got a brilliant little spot to go and try and crowbar that in here. And it goes, yeah, fuck it, why not?
So as you're writing, you're finding that these ideas, they pop into your head and then you throw them out onto paper as the best way you see that you can?
Best way possible, yeah. I mean, even sort of managed to... And again, it's disparate as well. It's not exactly as if I'm just going, right, there can only be boo movie sort of things, or, as guys already said, Total Recall. Horror in a way, I suppose, but then it even sort of touches on things like The Fugitive and the wonderful little speech that he gives out about, Tommy Lee Jones about searching every outhouse, barn house, farmhouse, fuck house, etc. I may have embellished it slightly, but even things like that, just in the course of writing, I get to a little segment, I think that kind of might link into that. So, and especially since I was going probably a bit too much pop cultural wise with this, everything was fair game, really. So,
one of the things I'm curious was, are these inspirations immediate things that you've recently just seen, or is it things that have been bubbling away in your head for some time that just kind of percolate to the surface?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose some things watched recently could pop in there, but I think in the main, I'm just kind of like a bit of a spongy sort of thing. So my brother and I can still recite bottom episodes to the nth degree, and even you and I, sort of back in the day when Reservoir Dogs came out in Pulp Fiction, we'd just spend endless fucking days just walking up and down the road drinking bottles of Lambrusco and reciting Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. And I think certain films and certain TV things always stand out and just leave an indelible mark on you. So it's just some films that you just watch once and you just think, I can't wait to watch that again. And or even years later you think, I haven't seen this for years, and you watch it again, you get a different appreciation for it. So it's just, I think especially nowadays when there's so much media to watch and absorb, the good will always remain with you. I think really, especially with me anyway. So, and if I can go and rip it off or adapt it in some way, that will.
I'm curious with Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space. When you talk about your influences at the moment, you talk very much about film and about television, which is very much kind of sort of the setup for it being a B movie.
No.
Was there any influences outside of film or television? Was there books or music that also influenced the creation?
Yeah, Paul Tremblay's Head Full of Ghosts is essentially around a modern day exorcism, and it was the first thing of his I'd actually read, and it was spellbinding, to be honest. I mean, mainly sort of gripe is that I'm not a big King lover, if I'm being perfectly honest. I love his books. I love the feel of it and what happens in the events. I just find that some of the over descriptiveness just tends to bog it down, and I don't give a shit about what colour tie they're wearing or this, that, and the other. And I appreciate that some people do, and there's different horse courses, but that's the only gripe about Tremblay is just again he's very descriptive. It's not a bad thing. It's just I don't write like that. But again, the characters in that were just. Again, they felt real, and the way they interacted was good. And one of the main characters now is called Meredith. So when I was writing Cannibal Nuns, especially the first draft of it, I think it must have been halfway through when I read Head Full of Ghosts. And then I went back and changed one of the main characters' names, the mother of the exorcist, person who's been exorcised, and changed her name to Meredith or Mary, just because I thought it's my own like little nod. You know what I mean? So. But again, yeah, it's just music-wise, I always tend to listen to music while I'm writing, and so that would tend to go and be dependent on what I'm writing. So when I wrote a Western zombie short story, for example, I listened to Red Dead Redemption soundtrack, and when you're writing some sort of sci-fi gubbins, you go and listen to Vangelis and stuff like that. I mean, Wormwood soundtrack's really good actually for zombie stuff. That's kind of sinister and a bit eerie. But in the main, it's stuff like Fuck Buttons.
So for Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space, do you remember what you were listening to whilst you were writing that?
No, I mean, my only thing is it can't have any words in, just because my brain just kind of latches onto things. So it's the reason why I shouldn't be telling people this because they're going to start doing it to me. If I start counting, either out loud or in my head, I have to go and break that chain before it gets too high, because otherwise all that happens then is that sequence will keep going on in my head, and it's just things like that. So even like opening lines, for example. So I had this section in Prime Directive where the entity tells, "Why did you take your helmet off, Dana?" And I said that to my wife over and over again for about 2 days, and she was on the verge of hitting me. And it's just my brain latches onto this stuff, and especially if I can listen to music with words in when I'm editing, so that's fine because I can disassociate the two. But when I'm writing, then I can't, because otherwise it will just start interfering with it. So that's why things like Fuck Buttons is brilliant, or what else? Again, even stuff like Fatboy Slim, you can't do. That's why it got to be soundtracks in the main, really. I tell you what, the Dawn of the Dead Waxworks record soundtrack is fucking brilliant. You listen to that, and obviously Goblin are pretty damn cool, but even some of the little bits in between, and the like Living Dead one as well, it's just some of the sort of disembodied groans and shit. It's just that's going to come in handy for the.
We're recording this interview actually in Dunk's office in his writing space.
Yeah.
And I notice a record player here. So
yeah.
Is that what you're using to listen to your music when you're writing nowadays?
It is to a degree, but again, the problem with records is as much as I love it, it's a constant changing. Especially when you're in the flow. There's nothing worse than hearing silence for 5 minutes, thinking, "Why is nothing on?" And you realise you've got to turn the record over. So at least with your iPod or whatever, you can just chuck it on, and it just burbles away in the background while you're making nonsense.
So we talked about your inspiration, why you wrote the book, and what was influencing you from there. If we go down to another fundamental question, what I'd like to know is, how did you write the book?
In many ways, I kind of wrote it how I would do ordinarily. When I first started writing, my first book, Class 3, so what I do is I write a chapter in an evening, say, and then the previous night when I started writing in, I'd almost go over the last chapter, not just to remind myself of the events, but also to go and tidy things up. But as I sort of, I hate to use the word, got better. I think I'll use the words, done more of it.
Got more experience.
I don't even say that because I think it's regressed in some places. But it's just, I kind of had, because I don't plot anything, but I kind of have ideas in my brain about obviously the arc and about what scenes are coming up and this, that, and the other. So it's very much just trying to make sure that you get from one scene to the next, and so you're almost writing them in seclusion, and then you realise then that you need something. It's almost like writing a song. You need a bridge to go and get from one to the other. So that's when you tend to sort of put these weird little joining chapters in, or a bit more exposition, or introducing characters that are only supposed to be there for one fucking chapter and they take over the entire book. Just things like that, really. So like the welcome nun in the mental asylum. She's literally just to go and join, move the story along, and then she basically stole it. So that's why I had to go and kind of bring her back as well. So
explain that to us. You say she stole it.
Yeah.
What happened now? What, you fell in love with the character, as in you were not romantic.
Yeah, well, a little.
But you enjoyed writing the character and wanted to explore him more. So what went on?
I think the main thing is when you write scenes with your main characters in, you're conscious of what they do and how they interact with things. So you're very conscious that as people spend the most amount of time with them in your book, they will go and get to know them better than any other character or any other place or space in that book. So they will pick up on the fact if you do something else with character for them. So obviously characters can grow, characters can change, that's fine. They can't do things which are completely anathema to what they would normally do. But in someone like the Welcome Nun, she's there for such a short period of time that they're almost intentionally over the top and overblown. Their characters and personalities are so much that you couldn't write a book about them because it would lose its it would lose a reason why they're funny. They're only useful in short bursts. They're basically just like a hand grenade. You just chuck it in the room, let it go off, and then you walk into the room afterwards and you go and survey the damage. And that's the kind of characters that I like writing, because they just come along, mess up the narrative for a little bit, and then they sod off. And then you think, well, that's a jolly little wheeze. And then when I'm going through the editing, I'm reading them again and I'm laughing, which is always a good sign. And then I think, well, they kind of deserve more. And that's when, if I can, I don't want to shoehorn them back in, but I was able to when I changed the ending for Cannibal Nuns to actually go and bring her back in and go and give her a tiny bit more screen time and a bit more razzle dazzle, which is my new saying at the moment, by the way. It's this thing which is actually is annoying the wife at the moment. I'm saying that a lot.
So I expect it more.
Razzle dazzle. Yeah, I've started now.
You talked about writing the book, and you talked about the fact that you had like an overarching idea in your head. So you didn't plan it.
No.
So did you have the ending and where it was going to go in your head already, or did you have like the first half of it and not sure where it was going to go? Explain that process, because that's a lot to kind of keep in your head.
It's different. I mean, so some books, say Mr. Sucky, I mean, lucky me, it's only what 40,000 words. It's not that big, but pretty much most of that, with the exception of the last fight, was pretty much in my head, because I only wanted a small cast of characters because that's how it would work better. Because again, I read books around that time. One of the person's books I read may have been sitting with me in this room. I'm just saying, dog. And it's just, I just felt with a smaller cast of characters, you're better off. You can focus on certain things, but with Cannibal Nuns, because that kind of got away from me a little bit in places, just because the way Flynn's character arc goes, it takes him away from where he starts. Because of course, after the initial botched exorcism, he then gets kicked out, or he gets given a choice, of either going back to his old life, or trying to go and get therapy and change. So instantly, he's taken away from the person he started off as, and also the events of what happened has changed him also there and then. So not only have you got his character arc, you've then got his trusted assistants, and of course he's still doing shit. He's still, he's got a new boss to go out and go and keep doing all the stuff, because evil doesn't wait. You know what I mean? But then of course so then you've already opened it up straight away. You've instantly got two paths, and then you got the Cannibal Nuns, which is another path. And then as you go, it's almost like you just setting fire to these new bits of paper, and they just flash into life, and they've got a life of their own, and you have to try and join all this shit together. So that's why with Cannibal Nuns, whereas ordinarily I would try and write a chapter equals a scene. I'd have 3 or 4 chapters equals a scene, just because again within each scene there's slight changes from how it starts, and that's so pretty much every time there's like a little change, either in character or just the event, then there's a new chapter just to denote that's that break. And here's a new one. So a lot of stuff was there from the outset, and a lot of it just comes as I'm just sort of walking to work and just milling around and just think, actually, hang on, that'd be quite good. Or I've got to do this scene next, and I don't quite know what to do in it. I like the nightclub scene, for instance. And that's when I thought, well, let's go and riff a bit off the Total Recall bit, and let's go make this, almost this unseen world on Earth actually here on Earth, just it's in the underground. And you got aliens, and you got fucking demons from another dimension, and you got all the things which we're told aren't true, but kind of people secretly wish they were.
So your brain, whilst you're writing a book, is constantly working on it when you're not writing it as well.
Yes, annoying, really annoying. And then even now, I sort of think bits could have changed, perhaps, or I mean, most of the books once they're done, you stick to fucking death of reading them. To be honest, they are, you just leave them alone. But
well, that brings me on to a question. So, how long did it take to write the book from beginning to end?
Probably from starting draft 1 to finishing the last draft to go off to my editor. Probably about 7-8 months, I think.
Is that normal for you for writing a book? I mean, it's a big book.
Yeah, so it's about 70,000, I think. It took a bit. It was quite quick, but then I kind of did something I don't normally do, which is I changed the ending, just because I thought I'd gone a bit too pop culture-y with it, and I wanted some tiny hint of difference in there, really. So,
what themes, what messages would you say you were exploring within the book?
It's weird, really. I mean, I suppose I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any form of God. To me, it boggles my mind more that people believe that there is something out there than the fact that I'm quite comfortable with the fact that there isn't. But saying that, I think pretty much most of the books I've written have got some religious undertone in them, whether that's examining it or I'm very careful not to poke fun at it, because ultimately, just because I don't believe in something doesn't mean that someone else doesn't, and the fact that I don't doesn't diminish the fact that someone else does. I believe in things which probably other people don't, and vice versa, and that's the joy of life. Unless it's something fundamentally wrong, like people being racist motherfuckers, and that's something which you go and shout and scream about. But the fact of whether people believe there's a God or not is completely by the by. But again, I suppose with Cannibal Nuns, it was just meant to be. I pretty much remember starting out, and it was not meant to be heavy at all. It literally just wanted to have. I wrote it as a summer blockbuster film. It was just meant to be entertainment. It was just meant to be switch off your brain, pick up this book, and it will get from A to B, and hopefully have a few laughs, and there'll be some guts and blood and that kind of thing. So,
you talk about have a few laughs and the guts and blood.
Yes.
So horror and comedy, it's one of those things that is a tricky blend. Seen many a time it fall flat on its face, and a few times where it works. I think of something like American Werewolf in London.
Yep.
Or Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
2 very different films but blending horror and comedy together. Now, you've been doing that and walking that tightrope of horror and comedy ever since you released your debut, Class 3.
Yep.
I mean, it's a tricky blend to get right, the two, and you seem to do it well. So I'm just wondering, how did you find what the right balance between the two are? What were your considerations of the tone when you were writing the book?
It's weird because I think in some places, I read some reviews and stuff, and they almost sort of say that there's too many jokes in it and it takes away from the story, or I'll kick the arse out of certain punchlines and keep dragging them on, and or that it suddenly stops and it gets too serious, and it's just you can get a bit bogged down in what other people think, and ultimately, as much as I appreciate everyone that reads my books, I don't really care what you think about it in a way. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but I write the books for myself, and I write the book pretty much for my wife, just because writing a book is different to, say, making a film. If I made a film of any of my books and I could go and show it to a screen of say 100 people, and I could look around those 100 people and I could see who laughs at the jokes, who retches a bit when they see the intestines getting pulled out of someone or teeth get pulled out and shit like that. With a book, you don't see that. You don't sit with each and every reader and you look at them and you go, "It's coming up to the funny bit in a minute." I didn't laugh. So I'm quite lucky that when I get to a draft written that's of decent quality, I pass it to my wife, and she'll sit there and then she'll roll her eyes or she'll, oh, for fuck's sake, because I tend to pack it with like little in jokes that we have and stuff like that as well. So, and it's just, and that's kind of my thing. It's just, you know, I think I'm pretty funny. You know, there's days when they're real come out singers, and there's some days when they're actually falling flat on the face. But I don't think I've obviously written some serious books, but it's rare that I take a joke out, and it's rare that I'm able to put a joke in. It's a weird thing. I was thinking about this when sort of got the questions through, and it's not really something that I go into my writing day thinking, do you know what, in this chapter I'm going to have 7 jokes, I'm going to have some guts, and I'm going to have this, that and the other, because I literally just kind of think this is what's going to roughly happen. So the jokes happen when they do. Sometimes I think, oh, I've got a funnier punchline which I can put in, or I can twist it slightly, or I can try and reference a joke that I made before. Again, that's down to Adam Millard, to be honest. I always remember him saying that, especially in his Larry books, he'd have jokes that run throughout the book. And you sort of use the same sort of punchline or the same setup, and you just change it slightly, things like that. So, but again, I don't really try and balance out by saying, oh, I've used too many jokes in this section, or I haven't used enough. They have to come organically, and they can only come as I'm writing it. Really, I say you can't go back in and crowbar that shit in because it's just impossible. It just doesn't work.
The comedy is literally off the cuff as you're writing.
Yeah, I say occasionally I get I say just weird little ideas about what I think would be a funny little setup or a funny little scene. So I'll try and find a way to go and write that in. I'm pretty sure I've done it in Cannibal Nuns, to be honest. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but the chicken factory scene, there's some bits in that, for example, where I had some jokes in mind for it, so I kind of pushed it towards it a little bit just so I could use them. But the only person that really takes out my jokes is Lynn, my editor. So, and that's if she thinks it isn't funny or it's just shit. Does
that happen often?
It does happen occasionally, and she usually tells me because her track changes are fucking brilliant. So it usually has more swearing in than my book itself, but it tends to have little gifs in there and pictures, and but then she gets the references that I make as well. So there's like Little Britain references and stuff in there as well. She's got like pictures of Matt Lucas and stuff in his little baby outfit, and that's, you know what I mean, that's when you know that you're kind of appealing to other people than just me and the wife.
You mentioned Adam Millard's Larry.
Yeah.
There was 3 of them altogether. So from a horror comedy point of view, I take it that was an inspiration.
Yep.
An influence.
I mean, weirdly, as much as I love the Larry books, Final Destination is my peak Millard as far as I'm concerned. So I remember reading that on holiday in St Lucia. I'd only really just written Class 3 for about 2 or 3 months after it came out. I remember reading Final Destination. I was trying to get ideas for the next book, and in a way, it kind of gave me validation to go and write the crazy shit that I was thinking of. I thought, well, if this guy can do it and do it really well, I can't beat him, obviously, because we're completely different people. But if he can do it and not really give a shit about it, and not give a shit what other people are going to interpret it as, then why can't I? So that book kind of gave me permission to do what I'm doing, I think, really. So then also it's things like Danny King. So I mean, the Hitman's Diary, I read that, and it's genuinely it's in my top 5. It's absolutely fucking brilliant. And again, it's dark humour, but again, the way it's done is just was just genius. Like I say, I could never write like that just because I'm far too slapsticky, and I that's how I write it. But again, that was another early highlight for me, really. So
Danny King, who featured in Black Room.
Yeah, exactly. Because so basically, one of my biggest claims to fame is that Danny King opened for me, because he starts off the book, and then I come right in afterwards. I mean, I'm not
with Time for Tea.
Yeah, Time for Tea. and yeah, and that's pretty much my writing claim to fame is that Danny King opened for me.
So going back to the concept of Cannibal Nuns
Yeah.
from Outer Space being this summer blockbuster / B movie.
Yep.
One of the things that you have in the book is you have trailers before the book starts. Now, fake trailers,
Yep.
because these trailers aren't actually of real books or films.
No.
So one of the things I'm curious about is where did you come up with the concept of having trailers in the book? Because the trailer in the book is odd and unique by itself. And also, following on from that, where did you get the ideas for the trailers, the fake trailers that you actually used in the book?
To start with, what I did is I kind of adapted one of the short stories I'd had an idea for but never finished, and then I also nicked a bit out of Hexagram. Like there's a bit in Hexagram where the cult, which I riffed off the Jonestown massacre, and there's essentially they make a film about that, and it stars Bruce Willis, and it's got all the action heroes in and stuff like that. So essentially, I thought, well, let's go and do a trailer for that. And then I put something on Facebook to go and say to people, this is what I've got. Anyone come up with any decent titles? I just want a title because then I can try and make a cover, and then I can try out a synopsis. I had about 700 replies to it.
700?
Yes. Most of them were Matty Bob Cash and some variation on the word penis. But I think I managed to go in. I think I only managed to use one or two in the end because, again, the problem is that it had to appeal to me because, again, as much as I love Matty Bob Cash and his and constant use of the word penis, I don't tend to write about knobs that much. So I discarded most of them. And I wanted them to keep them roughly similar themes to obviously the book itself. So I came up with a few, so like the Paddington Frisk, which is obviously based on Ennio Shikari's song, but also that itself comes from where they used to do the hangings in Paddington back in 1900s, and the Paddington Frisk was actually the little jiggle the legs do when they're dangling from the noose. And I just thought, that's just fucking crazy. How about this guy gets hanged, for a murder he didn't commit, but he doesn't die, so he's paralysed from the neck down, and all he's got is his head to try and work out overnight who set him up for this before the crow goes and eats his eyeballs. And I just thought that's fucking brilliant. And then what I did is to go and, because then of course my brain came up with the idea of, let's go make a hardback, a special edition one. But then I thought as well, with the digital version, so the digital version is effectively you go into the cinema to see it because it's cheaper, so you've got a cheaper ticket. So you're going to the cinema to see it, so you'd have slightly different trailers. So effectively the Kindle version is just you going to the cinema. The paperback is you buying like a normal DVD. And then the hardback is you buying the special edition DVD, the one where you go and get Scarlett Johansson's left nipple and stuff like that sent out to you in the post. So then I thought, shit, I need to come up with 9 different trailers at this rate. So I just went through stock images and just waited till I found some really cool ones. And I found some really stupid pictures, and I thought, that'd be really good. That'd be good. How about a speaker that kills people? Or the monkeys, the primate people that live on this untouched utopia, and then someone steals their king monkey, so they have to go and get band together, and they don't trust each other, and they have to go and rescue the monkey. And I just thought they were brilliant. And I just thought I managed to cobble it all together, come up with that stupid little synopsis, which everyone reads in the typical voice. It was a time of horror. And it's just, and then you're away. And then as long as you can read every single of my trailers in that voice, reading the book, you're fine. That's how you got to do it. And if you don't, I will report you. Don't know who to, but I will report you.
So you got the concept.
Yep.
You've got the introduction with the trailers.
Yep.
One of the other very striking features about the book is the cover.
Yes.
How did the cover come about? How was it created? Did you have any input into the cover? Who did the art, and what do you think of it? So
the cover is done by a guy called Adrian Stone, who did my Class 4 back and front cover, which is also fucking brilliant. And with any artist, I'm one of those guys that I've got a very particular image or idea about how it should look in my head. So I basically went out to AD, the same way I went out with all of them, with basically a design brief and say, this is kind of what I'm after. So for me, I wanted Graham Humphreys, for example, does a lot of the old sort of horror covers, and they're fucking outstanding. So wanted that sort of style where you kind of got, you know, the main character on there, and you kind of got the, you know, the nuns and shit in the background, and a slight hint of what there is going to happen. And then I basically said that this is what I'm after. And then he came back with what the cover was, and I had to make a few little changes. Like the nun's mouth was facing the wrong way, so I had to go and change that slightly so it went up rather than down, because I wasn't quite sure the logistics how that would actually open in the body. But things like the what I love, actually, I'll tell you about it. If you look at the cover, top of the fucking hill, you got like a little church. Never mentioned in the entire book, but I love the fact it's in there because it's perfect. It's got that mysteriousness, you know. It's that typical pure horror of the church on the hill, and there's bats and shit, and the moon's being obscured, and it's just that's exactly what I was after, to be honest. So, and as soon as I got it through, I was just like, this is fucking brilliant. So I'm well happy with it. And then of course I had to go and change it slightly for the for the black and white version on the thing, and make all the little details red and stuff like that. And yeah, that was great.
And did it get a good reaction?
I think so. I think most people like it. So yeah. I'm quite fond of it, which is the main thing, really. So, again, it's like most things. Well, as you know as well, especially you put out way more books than the ones I do. Covers are important. They're the most important thing in the indie book world. If you have a shit cover, this is a life rule for anything. If you have a shit cover, your book ain't going to get picked up. If you have literally a picture of a blue tack man on the front and it's supposed to be a werewolf, no one's going to bother to pick it up. Because if your cover looks shit, you could have the best written book in the entire world ever. No one's going to read it, apart from your friends. And then they'll give you 5 stars on Amazon to say it's brilliant and the cover's amazing. And they'll be lying to you. And you don't want that. So always, 2 things you don't stiff on when you self-publish or you go and self-publish a company. You don't short out on the cover and you don't short out on editing. Those are the 2 things. Because they're the 2 things that trip you up. You have a shit cover and you have typos and your are all fucked up. No one will ever read anything by you again. That's my little PSA.
Well, also, very helpfully, with Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space, if you turn over and on the back, it has a little guidance of what this book will contain, with little pictorial references on them.
Yeah.
It's novel. It's not something I've seen in a horror book before. So I just wondered, where did that idea come from? And how did you go about selecting exactly what things you would say it contains in? Since
I started doing my IQ stuff, I always had that sort of thing. Again, I think the biggest problem we have as indie writers is when you go to a convention. I've done it myself. You go up and down the rows, and you know, while it's good looking at the dolls and the millions of fucking cupcakes that people always have,
always good.
I'm there for the books. I'm there for the books and the comics, and occasionally the films, but it's more the books and the comics. So when you go up to someone, a writer you haven't seen or met before, which is unlikely in our case because we do meet a lot of people, because we're very affable guys. You look at what they have and you look at how they present it. So all you got to go on is, if you want to go and buy one of their books, is what's on there. So you pick the book up. You think, this cover looks nice. I'll look at that. You turn it over to go and read the blurb, which again is very helpful. But what I thought is that, much like video games and stuff like that, you kind of almost got little hints about what's in there. I thought, well, how about I have 8 little icons which basically hint at what else is in the book. Just so then you can, if someone picks up the book and reads the front cover and the back cover, they get down to little pictures and they see the fact it's got idyllic villages and a demon and making food, and they think, what the fuck?
What's the full list of them on the back of the
book? So nuns, obvs, and it says obvs because obvs. Monsters, and there's a very Beetlejuicy kind of monster. Cool weapons, making food, aliens, idyllic villages, pubs, and a demon.
Making food,
because that's what happened. So again, it's just, for me, it's just my little ISP to sort of say, you know, this is my book. I've done it on all of them so far. On the new one, I've actually got it done a slightly different way, but they're still there in one form or another. But it's just kind of me. I just really, it's only literally about 2 months ago I thought, why the hell have I not put them on the inside of my Kindle books? Because especially on that's like a brilliant visual way to almost think right at the beginning, this is kind of what you're going to get. So more stuff I have to do when I find the time. And basically when I stop playing Football Manager.
More work.
Yeah. We love more work.
Near the beginning of the interview, you talked about renaming one of the characters to change their name so it matched a character from a Paul Tremblay book.
Yeah.
I was wondering, in the book, when you were naming other characters and places, was there any significance to them?
Sometimes there are. I made a conscious decision in Cannibal Nuns that effectively priests are called by their surname only. It's almost like some kind of, I don't know, title, I suppose. They're never called by their first name, and that's why it's like that big reveal, when right at the end of the book you actually hear Flynn's first name, or when you hear James T. Kirk in Other Tears Tiberius, which helped Debbie out with a crossword puzzle the other day. While all the servants and all the assistants to the priest, they're only called by their first name. I suppose in a way, it's that kind of sort of... I've read Handmaid's Tale recently, just before that. Not really in relation to the book. I mean, the chalk and cheese. But again, the use of name and how you use someone's name can almost... It's like making a class divide in a way. You're almost putting them and us. You're almost putting these people who only refer to you by their first name. They're not worthy almost to go and have a surname, because who remember it? You're not going to remember the assistant's name when Flynn's out there smiting some demon, because he's the one that's going to be in the headlines and stuff, you see. So some books, the characters the names are intentionally chosen to go and either mimic a film or to go and try and mimic something else, or a theme in the book. Or so, for example, I wrote a book called Deadlock, and it's about... It's not coming out, don't worry about that. But I looked up demonology and stuff like that, and there's a demon in there called Minos, which is effectively, he's like almost like the guardian between this world and the underworld. But of course, Minos is an anagram of Simon. So when you're introduced to the character in the human world, his name's Simon. But then of course later on the reveal in the book is his name's Minos, ha ha ha, and he reveals himself in skulls and stuff like that. So in that case it is, but in the main. They're pretty much just the first name I think of, which is why in Summoned I had 2 Franks.
That's not good.
It's not good, and I didn't even notice it until Lynn came back to me and basically said, "Why is Frank now a spider?" And it's just shit. So then you got to change it, and then you inadvertently change it to something else which doesn't then work, and it's a pain in the ass. But so the places in Cannibal Nuns as well intentionally set it on the English-Welsh border, and that again was a nod for Chris Hall. Because I always remember, obviously, we went down to the Guy and Smith convention, God knows how many years, 6, 7 years ago. Like the first proper all-three thing I think we ended up doing. And that was just good fun. And I always remember just, Wales is a spectacular place in terms of countryside. And the thing about Cannibal Nuns is, you can't have cannibal fucking nuns from outer space landing in the middle of London, because it's a little obvious. So they have to land somewhere a bit out of the sticks, and then kind of, and also as well, people tend to notice large populaces getting turned into food. They don't tend to notice if, obviously you notice if a village goes missing, but it's a smaller scale. You can find easier ways of about it. So that's why it's actually set exactly around that place in Wales. Although the geography is very different.
The characters themselves, there is a bizarre array of them. The most bizarre character, I think, and maybe the most bizarre character I've seen or read in a book in some time, is an axolotl living in the priest's beard.
Albie, yep.
Albie.
Yep.
So I just got to ask, where did that come from and why?
Albie was actually one of the first things that come into my head when, shortly after I'd actually come up with the book, it's the book title itself. So I wanted, obviously, Flynn to be the main character, and he's like, this priest, and after the exorcism goes wrong, and he's kind of almost, he's off on his own basically. I still love the duality fact that for every Batman you got a Robin, for every main hero kind of guy, you've always pretty much got someone there to back them up. It's like, to go and pick them up when they're down, or they're getting their ass kicked, and they always sort of turn up in meeting the time. And I thought, well, I can't really have another human, because this is the kind of journey that Flynn needs to go on himself. You can't go to rehab with someone else. I mean, you could do it that way, but it just didn't work very well. So I had the notion of, well, why not give him something, an ally, which is different. So because I try and write this weird blend of horror, comedy, and bizarro, I thought, well, what's the weirdest thing that I could give him? Guinea pigs, they've been done. And also, while they kind of counteract the terrifyingness with their, very small little noses, I just thought, well, again, it's not out there enough. So I just come up with an axolotl. I just thought it'd be brilliant. And the best thing of all, because I say kind of need a little water to survive, that he lives in his beard. So he's got like all the sweat, and he basically lives off all the sweat and the scum, and he's perfectly happy doing it. And so for most of the book, Albie the axolotl just comes out with a little beard, has a little chirrup, and then goes back in again. And of course, later on in the book, he's actually revealed that he's met the Cannibal Nuns before, and he's definitely up for some payback. And he's a tiny bit bigger than the beard-dwelling Albie.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the ending.
Yeah.
You mentioned it before, that you changed the ending.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is in all different versions of the book, you have different endings as bonus features.
Yep.
Tacked onto them. How did you write these alternative endings? Why did you write the alternative endings? And which one came first? Was it the normal ending? You said you changed the normal ending. So which was the first ending? And why did you change it? And how did you come up with all the other endings?
So I think...
And why did you do that?
So, again, brain is the underlying reason. And so the actual ending that the book, when I first wrote it, finished on, was what I call the Darth Plagiarist ending. Where it's an extra in, I think it's in all of the versions. It's definitely in the paperback version and obviously the hardback one. And effectively, actually, it's definitely not on the Kindle one, because the Kindle one is... See, this is what I mean. If you got the Kindle version, you're great and I love you, but you're missing out on stuff. So just go and buy the paperback. But yeah, so it's called the Darth Plagiarist ending intentionally because it does riff off a lot of things. I mean, it effectively ends on a Back to the Future ending. Where the dude turns up and, it's great, you've killed the Cannibal Nuns, but they're back, but they're in the future, and then we have to go and kill them in the future. And so then Flynn basically has a decision to make of, fuck it, why not? I've got nothing else holding me here, because he's already killed him once, so he thinks he better go off in the future and kill him. So then he does that. And then Debbie read it.
So this is the original.
Yeah, and that's why I called it a Darth Plagiarist ending, because it was very... It wasn't plagiarist, it borrowed themes and motifs. But then Debbie read it, and she put the phone down and said, well, what do you think? She goes, it was alright. And then, normally, because I don't use beta readers, I did in the early days, but what I was finding is that they dilute what I'm trying to say. Because if you ask three people their opinion on one thing, you'll get three different opinions. Which is great. Opinions are good. But the problem is that the only opinion I really care about on my book is me. If they're pointing out something, this person's done this, or X, Y, and Z, that's very helpful. I can go and fix that. But if they're telling me, I didn't like the ending, I want this to happen, or I wanted that character to not die, but I wanted him to go and actually, bone this person, or become a stone golem or something, that's not my book, you know what I mean? So that's why I only really rely on Debbie. So
you rely on Debbie as your beta reader,
yep,
and Lynn as your editor.
Yeah.
And that's the only two people that review and comment on your books before they're released?
Yep. And that's really, so Debbie gives me a sense of overall, because as she's, she's a reader, and she doesn't like horror, she doesn't like funny things, she doesn't like gross things, she doesn't like weird things. I'm surprised she's with me, if I'm being honest, because I'm pretty much all of those in one little round of plasticine. But she reads it, and then so to me, when she notices, this doesn't work, or this isn't right, that stands out to me. But then Lynn is, as she's got this forensic weird little mind, she'll be able to say, well, hang on, this guy did that back there, so he can't then do this. And that's the kind of logic holes that I can then fix. So, yeah.
So going back to the endings then, I took your...
Yeah. So, yeah, I went off on tangent town. So when we got to the end of that, and I agreed in a way, because there was something bugging me about it. It just didn't sit right. It almost felt like, I hate cop-out endings. And I always made this intention of, I said right from the beginning, I will not ever write a sequel to Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space. I didn't want it. I always said if there was going to be sequels, I wanted other people to write it. And then what I was going to do is I was effectively going to be like the disgruntled, director first off. Who wrote a little piece about it in the book saying, this strays completely away from my artistic integrity. I hate it. The thing he does with this and is wrong, and I wanted to do that. So then I thought, okay, well, how can I make it better? And then I thought, well, I need to go and make heroes, but not just out of Flynn. I need to make heroes out of all the other good characters, because even if they're not with Flynn for most of the book, they're there with him at the end. They all help him to go and beat the nuns, even in some small little way. So that's when I thought, okay, let's go and change it. So that's when I come up with the stupid fucking car chase around the building, and Flynn goes off to save his mate, and it's just, and then I bring the welcome nun back as a distraction for the giant fuck off monster, which was the nuns, because they all melted down and they all became one big huge monster. And then Albie comes along, he turns into a bigger fucking monster, and it's just, that kind of felt better to me, but it also felt more stupid, and more stupid wins, because it's just, that's why I want almost people to read it. I always want to see what they get to the end of the book and they think, what the fuck? How the hell did you get to that from there? And that's what I loved about it. So then when I was, so then I wrote that ending, and it passed muster with Debbie, which is good. So I thought, well, brilliant, I've got another ending here now, so I can go and use that in, because I would have, my brain was then working on the concept of, let's come up with a DVD for the paperback. But then when I came up with the idea for the hardback, I thought, well, how about I do another ending? Because again, more work. And then I thought, well, the endings I've done so far have been, one's been very pop culture, one's been very heroes, hooray. And I thought, well, let's do one which is completely on the spectrum, which is bleak as fuck. The Hawkins ending, if you will.
Rich Hawkins.
The Rich Hawkins ending. Because if you ever read any of his books and you're in a jolly disposition, chances are by the time you'll finish it, you won't be. Because his books are bleak as fuck. They're brilliantly written, but my God, there's no joy. No joy. So then that's what I basically did. I turned it on its head. So Flynn doesn't save the day. All the people he's been trusting either die or turn on him. And it's just, I just thought that was a brilliant way of just twisting it on its head. And also it's pretty quick to write, so I didn't have to go and write too much as well. So
was that fun to write?
I wouldn't say fun. It was difficult because I don't. It's a bit more serious than the rest of the book. So, and it's difficult for me to write serious. So, I had to take some of the jokes out then, or at least not make as many anyway. So, but yeah, I think it was good fun. Jessica had a completely different spin on characters that by then I was starting to get a bit sick of, to be honest. So it was good fun killing them. It's called the Red Dwarf ending. And
why is it called the Red Dwarf ending?
Everyone's dead. Everyone's dead, Dave.
Like the first episode.
Yeah. And the actual ending in the book now is called the Dabby Dar ending, which is a weird little pet name I have for Debbie, so because she was obviously the influence for it. So, but you better wish you hadn't asked now.
So that's the end of the book. Let's go back and look at the middle. There's a piece that I wanted to talk about. Probably one of the most memorable scenes. It's a whole chapter by itself, and I distinctly remember it, and it's been seared into my brain. Certainly a favourite of mine, and I think maybe a favourite of other people's looking at reviews. And that was the chapter which is effectively a parody of the film Predator.
That's the one.
So I'm really curious about this. How did that idea come about, and how did you create and craft that?
For me, it's just, again, because I had to come up with the bridge to get Flynn from meeting the main Archbishop guy to get him to rehab, or at least close enough to rehab for shit to happen, because he had to meet the nuns before he gets to rehab, because rehab is obviously where the nuns live. So you can't, even if you just met them in passing, which is kind of what happens, he doesn't actually technically meet them, but he's in there, the same location as shit's going down, which is what I wanted. I didn't want them to meet until the big, because Flynn's blissfully fucking unaware, because he's struggling to go and get a handle on booze. But also, he's just not the same Flynn anymore. He's not the same Flynn that cast the demon out at the beginning. He's a broken man. So, to go and get him from A to B, I had to go and use a silly character, which was the taxi driver character. So his role is basically to go and ferry tourists around, which is why he affects a Scottish accent. He's not even Scottish, but it gets him in. It gets him a few more quid and tips. You know what I mean? So I thought, well, let's go and make it. Let's go make it silly. So this guy has, on the 40-odd minute journey to go by taxi, he's there telling him, "I met the Cannibal Nuns," and it's this, and it takes him back to his childhood. And as soon as I started writing it, I was in pop culture mode by, and I thought, well, Predator would be brilliant for this. So I just, his little gang was all riffed off all the characters.
So when you say Predator was brilliant, why was that? Because you had an alien encounter with a group of people.
Yeah, and I think as well was in Cannibal Nuns, where in the main you got a coach load of them, so you're dealing with multiple ones against few people. I wanted to go and flip it out, so you had a Cannibal Nun. So you almost, because I think the worry was, especially when you meet Cannibal Nuns for the first time and they rip through the campsite, you almost get a bit of think, it's because there's loads of them. Of course, 30-odd Cannibal Nuns would easily take about 10, 15 humans. So I just thought, well, let's go and twist it around and let's have one Cannibal Nun versus a group of humans. It's because like the classics like Terminator and stuff like that, when you've got this almost impenetrable, impervious being. And I just thought it worked really well. So, she's been left alone. She forgot to go and she basically forgot to get the coach home. That's why she's been left on Earth. And that's why she's her mask is a bit mouldy and this, that and the other. And then it's just this gang of kids just going out looking for truffles. Because you can't have like 10, 12-year-old kids going off to go and, rescue a hostage from a Marxist, heavily armed group in the middle of the jungle. They've got to have a reason. And again, the reason can't be... In Bizarro, you can't have something simple. It can't be, I'm going to go to the forest and I'm going to collect porn. It's been done. That's what everyone goes to the forest for. That's what you and I go to the forest for, is to go and collect porn. So it had to be something silly. It had to be, again, a juxtaposition to their children. What the fuck do they give a shit about truffles for? And the brain of it, sort of Carl Weathers is basically, oh, but I've heard there's a way we can get some money from it, and from that we can go and spend it all on Coca-Cola and Top Deck and stuff like that. And it's just, I just thought it worked brilliantly. But of course, as it goes on, they all got killed off in the same way, in exactly the same sequence.
As the film Predator.
As the film.
Did you have to go back and watch it, or is Predator already burnt into?
It's burnt into my brain. I think it's burnt into pretty much all our brains of generation. I did have to go and just tool up just to make sure I got some of the names right, and again see if I could go and riff on any of those names. Going back to the sort of chat earlier, but it was just. I thought it was just brilliant. It just set itself up so well to be used. Because whereas in Terminator you got obviously Sarah Connor and what's his face against the Terminator. Here at least you got 6 people, and it's perfect for a little gang of kids, And of course you get to the end of it, and then the taxi driver sort of looks back, please just punch. What do you make of that story? And normally a tourist would fucking lap up and he goes, you just ripped it off, and I just loved it. I just loved how people. I've spoken to people about it, and they said they got halfway through that chapter and they're going, oh fuck, it's Predator, and then they get. I even managed to get because they had to go and get to their bikes, and of course choppers. Let's go to the choppers,
which was brilliant.
I loved it because they had to make sure it translated to Americanism. But then I just thought, and then of course he gets here and he's proud as punch on the story. And I just want it deflated, and I just want it in an instant. Yeah, it's Predator. He just ripped off the story of Predator. And he goes, well, maybe, and it's just, and that in itself is a joke, and that's why some jokes you can tell in a couple of sentences, and some jokes you can milk for a fucking chapter. And this one, even Lynn said that she was getting to a point with it. She said, "I think you're going too far," and then she goes, "Oh fuck, you're doing a Predator, aren't you? It's fine, go."
That was the joy of the fact that there's that realization on the reader of what they're reading, and they get it at some point, and I expect people get it at various different points as they go along, and then at the end you call it out.
Yep.
So you get the character to call it out anyway.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about it, because again, it's a character siding with the reader, and I think there's once you get that, you tend to have a better connection with them, because you call them bullshit at the same time as they are. You know what I mean? It's just I loved it. It's so much fun writing it.
So you've written the book, you've got the cover.
Yeah.
It's all edited. It's all ready to go.
Yeah.
It's on the verge of coming out. It's just about to come out. How are you feeling?
Well, first off, a little annoyed because it's summer. Because I had the opportunity to release the book earlier that year in like the January, February. And as you said, it was ready. It was good to go. And I went, no, it's a summer blockbuster film. And I don't, trying to sell a book in summer is, you think it'd be brilliant because people go on holidays and something like that. I've done it before and it was shit. Because it almost, people spend their money on other things. And I thought, I don't care. It's a summer blockbuster film. It's coming out in summer.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about it at Christmas time, didn't we?
Exactly. Because in the red line, that's exactly when we're chatting about how we can publish it, and I said it has to come out in the summer, and summer's not my best time of year. I hate it. Too hot. People are too happy. It's just my creative juices are at an all-time low during the summer. I'm not the best really. So, but for me, it's just releasing. But again, I remember because we chatted about this as well. So we were starting to go and put stuff out around Christmas of the previous Christmas. We had like the sort of the 12 days of Christmas almost. 12 days leading up to the trailer coming out announcing it. Ordinarily, I tend to give books a 3-month head start, but this one, because we knew it was gonna. Well, I say I've been banging about it for fucking years, so I wanted to give as much lead time as possible, which is why we gave it sort of the 8-month treatment. So, and again, it's just about trying to go and get it in front of as many people's eyeballs as possible. So, I say up until the last one, it was my most pre-ordered book. So,
you're a bit disappointed about having to wait so long.
It's just, yeah. I mean, I'm the kind of person, especially early on, when I write a book, it was kind of write the book, get it all sorted, get it out there. I did it in about 6 to 9 months, say. But Cannibal Nuns had been ready for about a year before it was actually released. I mean, good to go. I mean, granted, I hadn't done some of the trailer stuff and at least to how they were done in the final version, but it was good to go. I could have put it out in August of the previous year and been done with it. I just don't like waiting. I mean, I'm quite impatient when it comes to that. But again, you can't just do something just because it annoys you. That's one of the lessons I've learned while growing up. We've been friends for quite some time, and there've been some times when been quite impulsive, shall I say?
What do you mean?
Yeah, understatement. But that's one of the things that I've found getting older is that I can control that better. I've become a bit less petulant, and I realised that you need to go and release a book the best time to release that book. So you worry about its own schedule. You don't worry about how you feel. So, for example, I've got other books which I feel are more of a winter read, so I try and go and wait to hold them off for winter. But so Cannibal Nuns to me was just it had to be summer or bust. And if we missed that August, we'd have had to wait till next year.
And then when it did come out, what was the critical reaction
like? It seemed to be pretty good. I mean, Jim McLeod, for instance, at Ginger Nuts of Horror, he seemed to quite like it.
So of that year,
yeah,
Jim McLeod from Ginger Nuts of Horror made it his #1 top read of the year. And how did that make you feel?
A little overall, to be honest. Just because writing comedy horror, I don't think anyone does this really for recognition and for acclaim, and definitely don't do it for the fucking money. Let's put it that way. But every time you release a book, you have a tiny, tiny, tiny glimmer of hope that it's going to go and end up on some shortlist somewhere for an award or something like that. You can dream these sort of lofty sort of things about, perhaps even like a BFS award or something like that, or something half decent. And it never will. For one simple fact is that horror comedy just would not get on that list.
What is that? It's considered lowbrow as opposed to a highbrow award winner?
Yeah. To be brutally honest, I think those kind of awards look for literariness, or for books which are deadly serious, or their themes are X, Y, and Z. But to me, and I think that's the thing that bugs me in a way, is that I'm not saying what I write is better or worse than anything else out there. I mean, I can't compare my writing, for example, to someone like Adam Neville, because his books are... Well, they're fucking brilliant, let's be brutally honest. But their tone and the way he writes is vastly different to how I write. So people get a different kick out of his books than they do out of mine. And again, that's just one example, just plucked out here because obviously Adam's got a new book coming out. But with horror comedy, people get almost the best of both worlds. I'm entertaining people, so not only are you reading a book where bad things are happening to bad and good people, you got all kinds of fucked up monsters in there. You got all kinds of fucked up, things happening. There's always moments of brevity, and there's almost moments of a respite of the unending horror, because that's life, and especially we as a nation, we use humour in difficult times to go and take the edge off things. So for me, when I've been writing, that's what I know. That's what I write. To me, it can be the worst time in your entire fucking life, but you'll always try and find a joke about it, either at your own expense or at something else, not someone else. I think it's very important to say that, and that's why, for me at least, I just kind of feel that, especially Cannibal Nuns. If I was ever going to suggest one book for my, for the books I've written, read Cannibal Nuns, just because it's peak me in a way. I'd say there are books that are better. But if you want to know what my style is like, or what I kind of think is the most successful, it's Cannibal Nuns. And I suppose that it irks me in a little way that I kind of got this different approach, and I don't think, and it's not just for me. It's it's Hardy Goody and Adam Miller and stuff like that. They're all writing this horror comedy stuff, which is very, very difficult to write, and doing it well, and not really getting any sort of acclaim for it, or even just like a little sort of heads up. So for me, seeing that when Jim wrote it, it was fucking brilliant, because it just felt like I actually was getting some acclaim from someone who fucking knows their stuff, and let's face it, Jim does. So yeah, that to me was that's my BFS award. That was my sort of that was my Stoke award, and I'm more than happy with it. So.
We've already talked about the alternate ending.
Yeah.
So you wrote an ending and then didn't like it, so you changed it. Was there anything else whilst you were creating the book which you removed, any outtakes as such?
I had a section in when Flynn first gets to Wales, when he almost walks up, because again I wanted this synchronicity almost of where the nuns are doing something in this village at the same time that he's there, so they're kind of in the same place doing stuff, but they don't mix. I think that's very important, because again Flynn has to remain oblivious, because he's an oblivious kind of guy. He's very insensitive at that moment in time. You can literally walk up and smack him in the face and he probably wouldn't even notice. So he kind of walks up there, and he's just outside he's near to the supermarket where the nuns are. And there was a bit of a play now. I think it ended up in the hardback. And again, I wrote it, and it just didn't seem to work. It almost kind of wrote myself into a dead end with it, and it just wasn't really going the way it was heading. So I just thought, no, fuck it. So next day, woke up, had a slightly different twist on it, and then took it down to where the exit at the beginning, where he gets to the pub, and there's no one in the pub. And again, that's my sort of 28 days later moment. Hello, and nothing apart from obviously a gobby northern person at the back. But that was that kind of moment, and I want him to sort of feel alone then, because that's what he is at that moment in time. He's alone. But again, I wanted that sort of sense that something bad is going on because there's no one there, and there should be someone there. And also come up with one of my best jokes as well. Where's everyone gone? They've gone to the Rapture, and that means something else very different from the fact that it was the Rapture pub just down the road, which is where everyone's gone for their lunch. So, and I fucking love that joke. That's probably one of my best.
You talk about the fact you wrote yourself into a dead end, and then you cut that out, and you went back and you then carried on in a different vein.
Yep.
Now, as a man that doesn't plan, you keep stuff in your head, and then you're just writing from day to day. Does that happen often? And if it does, how do you overcome it?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a frequent occurrence, but it does happen. Or sometimes you can go into do a session of writing, and you think, well, in my head, I'm going to go and start here, and I'll see where I end up. Or at least you've got a vague thing where you're going to end up at. And you can notice it halfway through, or a little bit into what you're doing, and you think, this isn't going how I wanted. That some scenes need to carry a bit of energy to them. Some scenes you're perfectly fine to keep the characters where they are and to go and let them mingle or to go and interact with stuff. But sometimes, if you're trying to advance the story, particularly, you need them to be going somewhere. You need to be doing something. And sometimes you can just feel they get a bit bogged down. Either they're chatting too much, or I've gone off at a tangent and they've interacted with something which I thought was a good idea at the time, and that's become the focal point, and I've kind of gone away from what I'm trying to get them to. So in that case, it'd just be a case of almost find the point at which it stopped working, and then just knock a few enters in and just try and sort of write it there. And then I always find that I can actually use some of what I've written already to go and move it up again. But then I've kind of trimmed some of the shit that was actually kind of blocking it in the first place. But I say it is, luckily it's not very common, but it does happen. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not deleting whole swathes, you're actually recycling some of that stuff.
Yeah. So I it's rare that I delete stuff there and then, because again it's that thing of you write something, you think, I can't use that now, and you knock it off and you get rid of it, and then a few sort of lines later you think, oh shit, that would have actually, or elements of that would have come in quite handy, or at least this sentence, at least that and the other. So I'll always just knock it down a few, and then again, if I can recycle bits I can, if not then don't bother.
What would you say you were most proud of the book?
I think for me it's just the overall presentation of it. I always remember when I first started writing, my brain would still do what it does now, where it would say, have always grandiose ideas, and it would say, why don't you do this? Or like Class 4, for example, you've got the different sections now. You've got like the survival guide, where you almost sort of going back and forth between them. And it's trying to do like a survival book. Or you got the sections in the freak show where they're faced off against different monsters, and almost this is what they look like, but here's what they are now. And I always felt that my ability as a creator couldn't quite match what my brain wanted to do. But ever since Mr. Sucky in particular, I kind of felt that I'm at a stage now where most of my ideas which I have in my head about the book do end up in reality. So for me, I've mentioned this God knows how many times before, but Roald Dahl books have always been the thing that for me as a kid, they weren't just books, they were experience. Because you had all the illustrations and stuff as well as the actual Mad Cat world that you actually went into. So it wasn't just words that you were reading; it was, you felt involved in it. You felt as though there was more to it, that you just scratch away if you wanted to, or you just leave it. And that's what I wanted to do with my book. So I want each of my book to go and be an experience. So when you pick up Mrs. Sucky and you look at it, you go, what the fuck is this dude doing? And you look through it and you realise that every single fucking page looks like it's photocopied, because that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a photocopied manual. With Cannibal Nuns, you open up the page and it's a black page, and it tells you play, because it's a DVD. You don't have that in the Kindle version because you're not there. So you're in the cinema, and you can see the crowd slowly filling out in front of you as the different trailers come up. If you actually look at the crowd on each trailer, you'll see that they're slightly different. And the trailer's there, and it's exactly as you are sat in that darkened room. And that's like Cannibal Nuns, it reads through like that. I say, when it came out, I try to get as close as possible to sort of video size as possible as well, book. But again, it's just, as a package and as an experience, I say it's not going to get 10 out of 10, for literariness or best book in the entire whatever. It's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be however many hours of sitting down, reading it, having a few laughs, and hopefully feeling a bit sick.
That's interesting, the detail that you put in with regards to the crowd, the sizes of the books. So, there's a lot of detail that might get overlooked. So aside from those bits that you've already discussed, is there any other details in the book you think sometimes are overlooked?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, to me, it's just, I'm not even going to say it's that certain people will notice it. It's just it's little things that I have to have. So it's like whether the page numbers go in the corner, for example, or if you look at the Cannibal Nuns header, the way it goes over the 2 pages, and that on one of the sections, you'll notice, I'm not going to tell you where because you have to find out your fucking self. The header actually changes ever so slightly, and it's literally for about 3 or 4 pages. And it's just, I ain't going to tell you where. If anyone finds it, you just let me know. But I say, it's literally, if it's a blink and you miss it thing, and it's one section, I think I might help you out. I think it's towards the back of the book, and there's a slight change in the header, and that's it. And I don't care if no one notices it, because I have to do that.
Everybody listen to this. Cannibal Nuns now, flipping through. I know I'll be when I go back. I'd like to talk about with regards to the book that we haven't discussed.
No, I mean, for me, it's just I kind of judge my writing on two sort of phases really, and one's everything up to Cannibal Nuns, Misasaki, before that, and everything afterwards, of which Cannibal Nuns is definitely up there, just because it marked a change, I think, for me, and just that I started to accept what kind of writer I was.
Find your voice.
Yeah, and also as well, it coincided with using Lynn as my editor. It's just, and it's kind of funny how that works, but it's really important to go and get someone in the process. I know people use beta readers, and those beta readers are the equivalent of Lynn to me, because I say she's just been invaluable, and I personally have noticed a big change in how I approach writing since those books have started to come out, and how I view them, and how I hope that other people view them. So I know, it's sort of going back to Jim. I remember when I sent Hexagram off to Jim, and I think he liked it. He wasn't overawed by it. So not that I was trying to sort of win him back and stuff, but I think in a way, when I kind of sort of sent him on Misasaki and Cannibal Nuns, and the fact that he really enjoyed them, that to me was, that almost sort of getting validation from someone that knows their stuff, and that previously I haven't particularly, wowed and stuff, to actually then come back and say, do you know what? Actually, this guy's not too bad. That for me was huge. So, will
there be a sequel, Cannibal Nuns?
God,
you said there wasn't, but you might change your mind.
I wouldn't write it. As I said, I think at some point in time I would like someone else to write it, or to write one. They don't have to do it with me. I think, you know what I mean. But my only stipulation would be that I would be I'll be writing a foreword and I'll be doing the packaging basically. So I'll be putting my little spin on it, in a joking way, of course, but just because, again, it's almost going back to the sort of the franchise films from the 80s and stuff. It's and then when they get rebooted, sort of let it down the road, and people, oh God, the original, I didn't intend this, or this isn't right, or he wouldn't use that, or he's left-handed, or the Cannibal Nuns, they would never have done that. And I just, it'd be cool to go and when you wrote Thingy, that was fucking brilliant. I loved it, and again, it's the closest thing possible to it. You kept very faithful to how they were.
Thingy being the novelette I wrote,
yes,
limited edition that came out for 25 copies.
Yeah.
Just on the day of release of Cannibal Nuns.
It was genius, because again, it's done in your way, but using the mythos and stuff like that. So that I'd want that writer to go and obviously use their style, because I hate people trying to ape other people. I just don't. But do it their way. But then me to come along and basically sort of say, wow, I think fine. If you look at page 7, when the Cannibal Nuns attack, they would never have done this, because by nature, the Kaihoro, and then just evolve into some really long, ambling little speech about why they would never have done that. And why they would use Listerine to go and make sure their teeth are nice and clean. It isn't really. It's Colgate plaque thing or whatever, I don't know. There are other mouth freshener liquid stuff you can use, by the way.
But Cannibal Nuns won't use them.
God, no, they just go and floss using your ligaments and stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Dunk. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with us and talk about Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Justin, and I very much enjoyed the time spent with you today. I only wish that we had more time to spend.
Cannibal Nuns from Outer Space by Duncan P. Bradshaw is available on paperback, hardback and Kindle. The Kindle can be purchased from Amazon. The paperback and hardback can be found through most book retailers, including Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and directly via the Sinister Horror Company at the website sinisterhorrorcompany.com. Thank you for listening. Being an independent publisher, we are just like you. We share the same passion, the same love for horror fiction. We believe in the incredible work being created, unnoticed by the mainstream. And we want to share it with the world. We are the Sinister Horror Company.